My name is Audrey Bennett, and I was 30 years old when the man I had planned to marry calmly informed me that fidelity had become an obstacle to his personal growth. Until that Thursday night, I believed Mason Hale and I were building a life together. We had been dating for almost 4 years and living together for 2 in a cramped apartment above a bakery downtown. The floors creaked, the kitchen barely fit 2 people, and every morning the smell of cinnamon drifted through the vents before sunrise. It was not luxurious, but it was ours. At least, that was what I thought. We had discussed buying a house the following year. Mason wanted a backyard. I wanted a kitchen with enough counter space to prepare dinner without balancing vegetables on top of the microwave. I had even started looking at rings. I never told him. Sometimes, while he was showering or out with friends, I would scroll through jewelry websites and imagine asking him during our anniversary trip. He had once joked that he would accept a proposal anywhere except a crowded restaurant. I remembered every detail. Mason remembered whatever was convenient. The week before everything changed, he became unusually attached to his phone. He carried it into the bathroom, turned it face down whenever I entered the room, and smiled at messages he refused to explain. Whenever I asked who he was talking to, he gave me the same answer: just people from work. But Mason had never smiled like that while discussing inventory reports. That Thursday, I came home after working late and found a pizza box sitting unopened on the coffee table. Mason had not set out plates. He had not poured drinks. He was sitting cross-legged on the couch, staring at his phone with an expression that disappeared the second he noticed me. "You're late," he said. "I texted you." I didn't see it. His phone was still in his hand. I should have confronted him then. Instead, I changed clothes, brought the pizza into the kitchen, and tried to pretend the apartment did not feel different. We ate in silence. After I had taken 3 bites, Mason cleared his throat. "There's something important I need to tell you." The tone sounded rehearsed. His shoulders were straight, his expression carefully solemn, as though he had practiced the conversation in front of a mirror. I put down my slice. "What happened?" "Nothing happened." Those 2 words told me something already had. Mason folded his hands together. "I've been doing a lot of thinking about who I am and what I need from relationships." My stomach tightened. He began speaking about emotional freedom, social expectations, and how monogamy had been imposed on people for generations. He said he had spent years suppressing an important part of himself because he was afraid of being judged. Finally, he looked directly at me. "I think I'm polyamorous." For several seconds, all I could hear was the faint humming of the refrigerator. "You think you're what?" "Polyamorous. I'm capable of loving more than one person. I don't think affection has to be limited just because society says it should be." He said it calmly, almost proudly. I stared at him. "Is there someone else?" His face changed immediately. "This isn't about one specific person." That wasn't my question. "Audrey, you're reducing something complicated to jealousy." "There's someone else." He looked toward his phone. That tiny movement answered me before he spoke. "Jessica and I have been talking again." Jessica Lane, his ex-girlfriend. The woman he once described as emotionally exhausting, dishonest, and incapable of respecting boundaries. "How long?" "We only recently reconnected." "How long, Mason?" He exhaled sharply. "A few months." The room seemed to tilt. "A few months?" "It started as friendship." "And now?" "There are feelings I may want to explore." The word explore landed like an insult. "So you've been talking to your ex behind my back, and now you're announcing that you're polyamorous? You're making it sound cheap." "I'm making it sound accurate." His jaw tightened. "I'm trying to be honest with you." "After hiding it for months." "I was figuring things out." "No, you figured out that you wanted Jessica, and now you're searching for language that makes betraying me sound enlightened." Mason pushed his chair back. This is exactly why I was scared to tell you. You're treating my identity like an excuse. Because you are using it as one. He stood and began pacing through the kitchen. He said I was being closed-minded. He said love should not be controlled. He said he still loved me and that his connection with Jessica would not diminish what we had. Then he added that I could date other people too, as though he were offering me a generous gift. This isn't about giving me choices, I said. This is about keeping me here while you sleep with Jessica. That's crude. It's true. He stopped pacing. I don't want to lose you. But you're willing to risk me. That's not fair. I laughed once, though nothing was funny. What happens if I say no? Mason became very still. It was the first moment of complete honesty that night. Then you're choosing to restrict my autonomy. So you'll see her anyway? I'm not asking permission to be myself. There it was, the ultimatum hidden beneath all the beautiful language. Accept the betrayal or become the villain who prevented his growth. I looked at the man I had loved for 4 years and suddenly felt as though I were seeing the machinery beneath his skin. He had already made the decision. The conversation was only designed to make me responsible for accepting it. That night, I slept on the couch. Mason went to bed without arguing. I heard him typing on his phone for nearly an hour. At one point, he laughed quietly. I stared into the darkness and thought about everything I had done for him. I had moved to the city when he received a job opportunity he claimed would change his life. I had paid off his credit card balance twice. I had covered the entire rent for 6 months while he quit his job to rediscover his purpose. I had defended him when my parents suggested he depended on me too much. And somewhere in my laptop history was a folder filled with engagement rings. By sunrise, I felt hollow. The next morning, I told Mason I needed time to process the transition. His face brightened. I knew you'd try to understand. He hugged me, and I had to force myself not to pull away. I'm proud of you, he whispered. This could be good for both of us. I almost told him to leave immediately. Instead, I watched him walk into the bedroom and began thinking about someone I had not spoken to in almost 3 years. His half-sister, Vanessa Hale. Mason and Vanessa shared the same father, but had different mothers. Their relationship had never been close, but it collapsed completely while Vanessa's mother was dying from cancer. Mason skipped hospital visits because they were emotionally draining, then posted long messages online about how difficult the experience was for him. At the funeral, Vanessa had prepared a eulogy. Mason persuaded their father to let him speak first. He read a poem he had written that morning, cried dramatically in front of everyone, and left before the burial because his friends were taking him out to help him process his grief. Vanessa never forgave him. I had always liked her. She was calm where Mason was theatrical, direct where he was evasive. Whenever we met at family events, she treated me like a person instead of an audience. That evening, Mason wore the navy shirt I had bought him for our anniversary. Jessica's favorite color was blue. I'm meeting her for dinner, he said, spraying cologne near the front door. So soon? We've waited long enough. He must have seen something in my expression because his voice softened. This doesn't change how I feel about you. I looked at the shirt, the expensive watch I had given him, and the confidence of a man who believed I would still be waiting when he returned. Have fun. After he left, I searched for Vanessa on Instagram. Her profile showed hospital photographs, hiking trails, and a graduation announcement from her nursing program. Her relationship status was absent, but an older post suggested her divorce had been finalized the previous year. I typed a message, deleted it, typed another. Finally, I wrote, Hi, Vanessa. I know this is unexpected, but I need some family insight. Would you be willing to meet for coffee? She responded 11 minutes later. This is about Mason, isn't it? We met the following afternoon at a cafe near the hospital. Vanessa arrived wearing dark green scrubs under a wool coat. She looked tired but composed, the way people do when they have learned how to carry exhaustion without displaying it. What did he do? She asked before sitting down. I told her everything. The phone secrecy, the speech about identity, Jessica, the ultimatum. Vanessa listened without interrupting. When I finished, she took a slow sip of coffee. You don't look surprised, I said. I'm not. Why? Because Mason has been planning this for months. My fingers tightened around the cup. How do you know? Our cousin Kayla told me he started talking about Jessica again in February. He said he was trying to decide whether stability was worth sacrificing passion. February. That was the month I had paid the full rent while Mason searched for his purpose. He called me stability? Vanessa's expression softened. I'm sorry. Something inside me cracked, not loudly, but permanently. He let me believe this happened last week. Mason rewrites timelines when the truth makes him look selfish. I stared through the cafe window. So what am I supposed to do? Leave him. I know. But don't leave quietly. I looked back at her. Vanessa leaned forward. Thanksgiving is at Dad's house in 3 weeks. Mason already told everyone he's bringing a special guest. I assume that means Jessica. What are you suggesting? That you come too. With whom? Her gaze did not move. With me. For a moment, I thought I had misunderstood. You mean attend together? I mean, let Mason see what happens when other people are allowed to explore connections too. That sounds like revenge. It is revenge. She said it without shame. Then her expression changed, becoming quieter. But it doesn't have to be only revenge. I should have walked away. I should have ended my relationship, found another apartment, and spent several months recovering like a reasonable person. Instead, Vanessa and I talked for nearly 3 hours. She told me about her divorce. Her husband had cheated with a coworker, then accused her of neglecting him because she worked night shifts at the hospital. She told me about her plan to pursue a master's degree in pediatric care. I told her about my family in Ohio, my job, and the small consulting business I dreamed of starting one day. The conversation stopped feeling like strategy. It began feeling dangerous in an entirely different way. When we left the cafe, Vanessa touched my arm. You don't owe Mason loyalty after he withdrew his. I'm still technically with him. Only because he wants you waiting in the background. That night, Mason returned after midnight. He smelled like unfamiliar perfume. How was your evening? He asked. Interesting, he smiled. See? Change isn't always bad. No, I said, thinking about Vanessa. Sometimes it shows you what you should have changed years ago. He did not understand. Not yet. But Thanksgiving was 3 weeks away, and Mason was about to discover that the rules he created for me were rules he could not survive himself. After that afternoon at the cafe, I expected the idea to fade. It didn't. Instead, Vanessa and I kept finding reasons to meet. At first, we told ourselves it was practical. She wanted to make sure I was okay. I needed advice about untangling 4 years of my life from Mason's. But every conversation lasted longer than the one before. Meanwhile, Mason seemed happier than I'd seen him in months. He spent evenings with Jessica while acting as though I should admire his emotional honesty. One Friday, he came home smiling. Jessica says we're communicating really well. I looked up from my book. I'm glad one of us is. He either ignored the sarcasm or genuinely didn't hear it. You know, he said while opening the refrigerator, I think this whole experience is helping us grow. Us. The word almost made me laugh. While he was celebrating his personal evolution, I spent Saturday hiking with Vanessa. She arrived wearing proper hiking boots, a weatherproof jacket, and a backpack that actually contained supplies instead of carefully arranged snacks for social media photos. "You packed enough food for 3 people," I joked. "I work 12-hour hospital shifts," she replied. "I don't gamble with hunger." The trail wound through dense forest overlooking the valley. We talked about everything except Mason for almost 2 hours. She told me funny stories about children at the hospital who insisted every nurse secretly lived inside the building. I admitted I had almost proposed to Mason. She stopped walking. "You bought a ring?" "Not yet." "But you were going to." I nodded. "I even knew where." Vanessa's expression filled with quiet sadness. "I'm sorry." "So am I." For the first time since Mason's confession, someone apologized without trying to explain why his behavior was actually enlightened. That difference mattered. As the weeks passed, the contrast between the Hale siblings became impossible to ignore. When Vanessa promised to call, she called. When she disagreed with something, she said so directly. She never expected me to guess what she was thinking. There were no emotional games, no silent treatments, no philosophical speeches designed to excuse selfish decisions. Just honesty. It felt strangely unfamiliar. Meanwhile, Mason became increasingly absent. Most evenings were spent with Jessica. Sometimes he returned after midnight, humming happily while I pretended to be asleep. One evening, he noticed several empty hangers inside the closet. "Doing some cleaning?" "I'm decluttering," he smiled proudly. "See? You're embracing change." I almost laughed. Something like that. What he didn't know was that every few days I carried another bag to Vanessa's apartment. A few sweaters, books, my grandmother's quilt, the framed photographs that actually mattered. Nothing large enough to attract attention. By the second week, nearly half my belongings were gone. Mason never questioned it. He was too busy discussing relationship podcasts with Jessica. Vanessa and I never officially planned when our friendship became dating. One night after dinner, she reached across the table and took my hand. Neither of us pulled away. That was enough. 3 weeks after Mason announced his new identity, Thanksgiving finally arrived. Vanessa and I agreed to drive separately. "If this turns into a disaster," she joked, "we'll each need our own escape vehicle." "You really think it'll be that bad?" She gave me a look. "You've never seen Mason lose control." That answer stayed with me the entire drive. According to Mason's last text, he assumed I would spend the holiday alone. "Thinking of you today. Hope you enjoy a peaceful Thanksgiving." I never replied. When I arrived, Vanessa's father answered the door. His eyebrows lifted in surprise. "Audrey? Happy Thanksgiving. Come in." His voice remained warm despite the confusion. As soon as I stepped inside, I saw Mason. He was sitting comfortably beside Jessica on the living room sofa. Jessica looked exactly like every photograph I'd seen online. Perfect makeup, leather jacket, confident smile. Mason looked up. For nearly 5 seconds, he simply stared. Confusion, recognition, shock. Then panic. "Audrey?" Before I answered, Vanessa walked out of the kitchen carrying a serving bowl. She crossed the room without hesitation. Then she slipped her arm around my waist. "There you are," she said warmly. "I was wondering when you'd get here." Silence. Absolute silence. Even the football game playing on television seemed quieter. Mason stood so quickly that Jessica nearly spilled her drink. "What is this?" Vanessa smiled calmly. "My girlfriend finally arrived." Mason's face turned bright red. "Your what?" "My girlfriend." "No." He looked at me. "No!" I met his eyes. "Happy Thanksgiving." "This isn't funny." "I agree. Jessica slowly looked between the three of us. I'm missing something. Vanessa answered before anyone else could. Mason decided relationships should be open. Jessica's smile disappeared. Vanessa continued. So Audrey explored another connection. Mason pointed directly at her. Not with my sister. Half-sister, Vanessa corrected. That doesn't make it better. I folded my arms. Interesting. What? I thought the whole point was that love shouldn't be limited by outdated rules. His mouth opened, closed again. That's different. Why? Because he searched desperately for an answer that didn't exist. Vanessa's father finally spoke. Mason. His voice was calm. What exactly are they talking about? Every relative in the room looked toward him. Mason rubbed both hands across his face. It's complicated. I have time. Jessica quietly shifted farther away from him on the couch. Apparently, this wasn't the holidays she'd expected either. Mason cleared his throat. I've been exploring polyamory. His father frowned. You've been what? It means, I know what the word means. The older man's expression hardened. Were you still dating Audrey? Yes. And she agreed. Mason hesitated. I explained my feelings. Vanessa answered for him. He announced his decision. I added quietly, he told me he'd continue seeing Jessica whether I accepted it or not. The room became painfully still. One of the younger cousins slowly lowered the cookie she had been eating. Jessica looked increasingly uncomfortable. I didn't know it happened like that, she admitted softly. Mason turned toward her. Jessica, you told me Audrey supported this. I thought she eventually would. Vanessa let out one quiet laugh. There it is. Mason spun toward her. You've wanted this for years. No. She shook her head. I wanted accountability. He pointed at me. She's only with you because she wants revenge. Maybe revenge introduced us, Vanessa admitted. But it isn't why she stayed. I looked directly at Mason. I didn't know what a peaceful conversation felt like until I met Vanessa. His expression faltered. For the first time since we'd arrived, genuine uncertainty crossed his face. His father slowly sat down. So let me understand. He pointed toward Jessica. You left a 4-year relationship to restart one with your ex. It's more complicated. And now you're upset because Audrey found someone else. Mason looked almost desperate. It's my sister. Half-sister. I don't care. I noticed. His father sighed deeply. I don't understand any of this. You don't have to, Vanessa replied gently. You only need to understand that Audrey didn't create this situation. Dinner was somehow served anyway. No one seemed willing to cancel Thanksgiving. We simply carried the world's most uncomfortable meal into the dining room. Conversation kept collapsing back into the same subject. Every attempt to discuss football, recipes, or holiday travel somehow returned to Mason's choices. One teenage cousin finally asked the question everyone else had avoided. So, are both of you dating Mason? Jessica nearly inhaled her drink. No! The table erupted into awkward coughing. Even Vanessa couldn't hide a smile. After dinner, I walked down the hallway toward the guest bathroom. Mason followed. Audrey. I stopped. We need to talk. Against my better judgment, I nodded. We stepped into an empty bedroom and closed the door. He turned immediately. How long? Long enough. You planned this. No. You wanted to humiliate me. I looked at him quietly. Do you remember what you said the night you told me about Jessica? His shoulders stiffened. You said if I couldn't accept your decision, I was limiting your growth. He didn't answer. You changed our relationship without asking me. I was trying to be honest. You were asking me to stay loyal while you explored someone else. His eyes softened. Audrey, 4 years. I remember every one of them. This doesn't have to end. It already did. He stepped closer. Vanessa doesn't really love you. You don't get to define love anymore. His voice became almost pleading. Come home. I slowly removed the apartment key from my pocket. I already left. His face fell as he realized what that meant. The empty closet, the missing books, the disappearing photographs. He had never noticed because he had been too busy watching someone else. I chose someone, I said quietly, who never asked me to compete for a place in her life. Before he could answer, the bedroom door opened. Vanessa stood there. Everyone's looking for dessert, she looked at Mason. And I think this conversation has reached its expiration date. Neither of us argued. We returned to the living room together. Less than 30 minutes later, Mason grabbed his coat. This family is impossible. Jessica followed silently. As he reached the front door, Vanessa called after him. Mason! He looked back. I hope your authentic journey was worth it. The front door slammed hard enough to rattle the windows. The entire house remained silent for several seconds. Finally, Vanessa's father sighed. Well, he looked around the room. That was certainly memorable. Everyone laughed nervously. But as Vanessa slipped her hand into mine beneath the dining table, I realized something. Thanksgiving hadn't been the end of Mason's story. It had only been the moment he understood he no longer controlled mine. The fallout from Thanksgiving was immediate. Before Vanessa and I even reached our cars, my phone had already started vibrating. Missed call. Another. Then another. By the time I arrived at my apartment, Mason had called 34 times. His text messages swung wildly between anger and desperation. How could you do this to me? This was supposed to be about growth, not betrayal. Please answer. We need to fix this. I blocked his number. An hour later, emails started arriving. The next morning, he borrowed mutual friends' phones. When those stopped working, he somehow found me on LinkedIn. Every door I closed, he tried another. 2 days after Thanksgiving, I returned to the apartment while Mason was at work to collect the last of my belongings. There wasn't much left. A few books, my laptop monitor, winter coats, the coffee mug my grandmother had painted years earlier. I left my key on the kitchen counter beside a short note. Thanks for encouraging me to explore new connections. Without that conversation, I never would have met Vanessa. I've already paid my half of the rent through January. Take care of yourself. It was honest, maybe a little cruel, but not nearly as cruel as asking someone to stay faithful while you planned a new romance behind their back. I thought that would finally end things. I underestimated Mason. 3 days later, he appeared outside Vanessa's apartment. She was still working at the hospital when I heard pounding on the front door. I opened it. Mason looked exhausted. Dark circles framed his eyes. His usually perfect hair was unwashed, and for the first time since I'd known him, he looked genuinely frightened. You've destroyed everything, he whispered. I crossed my arms. No. You did this to punish me. You changed our relationship. I just wanted honesty. You wanted permission. His eyes filled with tears. I still love you. I almost believed he thought that was true. No, I answered quietly. You loved knowing I'd always be waiting. His expression hardened. This isn't over. Then he walked away. When Vanessa returned home, she wasn't surprised. He always escalates before he gives up. Unfortunately, she was right. Within days, Mason launched a campaign across social media. Long, emotional posts, cryptic quotes about manipulation. stories describing himself as the victim of emotional abuse. According to him, I had seduced his vulnerable half-sister to punish him for discovering his identity. He never mentioned Jessica. He never mentioned the ultimatum. He never mentioned that our relationship had ended because he chose someone else first. Most people ignored the posts. A handful of his closest friends attacked me publicly. Vanessa and I refused to answer. Instead, we posted a simple photograph from an art museum. No caption, no explanation. Just two people smiling naturally. That photograph irritated Mason far more than any argument ever could. A week later, karma quietly arrived. Vanessa's cousin Kayla called. "Jessica's seeing two other guys." Vanessa looked at me. "Should we tell him?" I shook my head. "Not our responsibility." He discovered it anyway. Jessica accidentally uploaded photographs from a weekend trip with another man. Mason exploded online, accusing her of dishonesty and violating the principles of ethical polyamory. The irony was breathtaking. The man who had insisted love needed no boundaries was suddenly furious that someone else had refused to make him the center of her universe. Vanessa simply shook her head. He still doesn't understand. As Christmas approached, life became unexpectedly peaceful. For the first time in years, I wasn't constantly worried about saying the wrong thing or disappointing someone impossible to satisfy. Vanessa encouraged me to be exactly who I already was. She celebrated my promotion at work. She listened when I talked about opening my own consulting business. She never made me compete for affection. One Sunday, she met my parents. My mother hugged her within 5 minutes. By dessert, my father was already showing childhood photographs that normally required months of trust to unlock. As we drove home, Mom called. "I liked Mason," she admitted, "but I like Vanessa much more." Coming from my endlessly diplomatic mother, that was practically a standing ovation. For almost 2 weeks, everything remained quiet. Too quiet. Then my receptionist called. "Audrey, there's a man here insisting he needs to see you." My stomach dropped. "Mason?" "Yes. He says it's urgent." I asked security to let him into the conference room before he created a larger scene. When I entered, he was standing beside the table holding a thick envelope. "You need to look at these." He dumped printed screenshots across the table. They were text messages between Vanessa and Kayla. The dates matched the week Vanessa and I first met. One message read, "She's the perfect way to get revenge. She has no idea she's just being used." Another said, "Once Mason suffers enough, I'll dump her too." Every message painted Vanessa as calculating and heartless. For several seconds, I couldn't breathe. The screenshots looked real. Mason watched my face carefully. I didn't want to believe it either. "Where did these come from?" "Kayla sent them." Something felt wrong. Kayla barely spoke to Mason. Why would she suddenly betray Vanessa? "I need to talk to her." His eyes brightened. "I knew you'd understand." An hour later, I met Vanessa at a cafe near my office. Without saying a word, I handed her the papers. She read every page. Then she laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was ridiculous. "These are fake." "They look convincing." She pointed at the first page. "Look at the date." I checked again. May 16th. I wasn't even in the state. What? I was presenting at the National Pediatric Conference in Phoenix. She opened her phone, Instagram photographs, conference badge, hotel room, group dinners. Then she opened the conference website, recorded presentations. There she was, speaking on stage before hundreds of medical professionals. The timestamp matched the exact hour one of the fake messages claimed she'd been texting. They didn't even check my schedule. Relief washed over me, followed immediately by anger. He brought forged evidence to my workplace. Because he's desperate. That evening, we drove together to Mason's apartment. He answered almost instantly. The confident smile disappeared the moment he saw Vanessa standing beside me. "The screenshots are fake," I said. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Really?" Vanessa folded her arms. "Interesting. We spoke to Kayla. It was a bluff. We hadn't. But Mason reacted exactly the way we hoped. His eyes widened. You talked to her?" That single sentence told us everything. "You made them," I said. "No. You didn't even bother checking where Vanessa was that week." He looked from me to Vanessa before finally lowering his head. "I just wanted you to see who she really is." "I already do." His shoulders sagged. "We were supposed to get married." I nodded. "We were." "You threw it away." "No," Vanessa answered before I could. "You threw it away the moment you decided Audrey should compete with Jessica for a place in your life." Tears filled his eyes. "I loved her." I took one slow step forward. "You loved having someone who always forgave you." Silence. "You loved my loyalty." Silence. "You loved my stability." Silence. "But when loyalty required sacrifice from you instead of me," I shook my head. "You chose someone else." No argument came, no philosophical speech, no lecture about emotional freedom. For the first time since this nightmare began, Mason had nothing left to say. We walked away together. Neither of us looked back. That night, we blocked every remaining email address, every unknown number, every possible way Mason could reach us. Then Vanessa surprised me with 2 plane tickets. Italy, next summer. "A new beginning," she smiled. 2 days later, one final email appeared. Only 4 sentences. "I'm sorry. I understand now. I hope you're both happy. Please don't contact me again." I read it once, then deleted it forever. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if Mason had simply been honest before betraying us both. Maybe we would have separated peacefully. Maybe we would have remained friends. But then I look across the room at Vanessa, laughing while planning our trip, completely unaware I'm watching her, and I realize none of those possibilities would have given me the life I have now. Losing Mason felt like the end of my future. Instead, it became the beginning of the one I was actually meant to live.